Press the button, my friend.
The Out of Bounds Show is live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge in the Bank Plus studio.
Check it out.
And good morning. Welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home. Save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Any of the 82 counties in the state of Mississippi. We're streaming live right now on thezone1059.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We welcome in national championship coach Mike Bianco, his Ole Miss Rebels. Preseason top 5, preseason top 10, and some polls, and they will get it started on Friday. Coach Bianco, can you believe that this thing starts on Friday?
Oh, yeah. We've been waiting for this for a long time. So, yeah, Bo, thanks for having me. And, yeah, we can't wait to get to Friday. So we've been waiting a long time.
Is it any different now that you had the big trophy in the ring this year?
There's a lot of differences, but not probably the ones that you think about. I mean, the differences are just being busier, a lot more interviews, a lot more speeches, a lot more asks, of your time and autographs and all those. And all those are good things, when people want to hear from you and, want your autograph or picture and all those things. And can you give a leadership speech over here? And those are all good things. But yeah, it's been a much busier off season. But from a baseball standpoint, no. I mean, from a baseball standpoint, I think pretty easy to separate and put in the past last year and try to get done what you need to get done through the fall and early spring here in practices. Sure.
Let's talk Hunter Elliott. Not every squad in the SEC has a bona fide, legit ace. And you do. He was fabulous, magnificent for you last year as a freshman. Just talk about maybe what he's done the last 3 weeks and maybe what he did in the fall to possibly be even better, Coach.
Yeah, we from the final game that he threw, in Omaha, the championship game, a few days later he was in Cary, North Carolina. He made the USA national team along with Jacob Gonzalez and flew to the Netherlands, and we had a rotation. I don't know if you'd necessarily call him the number 2 starter, number 3 starter, but he actually started twice, and only a handful of kids did. Rhett Lauder, who was the ACC Pitcher of the Year, threw in the first spot. Joseph Gonzalez, was terrific as well from Auburn. But Hunter was one of the better pitchers on the USA team. Pitched really well this summer. One of the goals this fall was to try to improve his breaking ball. Last year he threw a curve and a slider, and we kind of ditched the curveball this fall and really tried to make one breaking ball and make it more of a premium breaking ball. And I think we accomplished that. I think he would tell you it's still got a ways to go, but a better breaking ball than he had last year to go along with an outstanding fastball and changeup, and he showed that. I think this fall the live hitters, and then of course early this spring.
Nice, Mike Bianco on the Out of Bounds Show and the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Outside of Hunter Elliott, how does the starting rotation look?
Well, we haven't released it. We'll probably release it this afternoon. But I think it's not a secret for the people that have been in the stands and watching us up close that, guys like Jack Doherty, transfer from the University of Indianapolis, Xavier Rivas, a left-handed pitcher, and Grayson Saunier, true freshman from Collierville, are probably along with Hunter, the 4 guys that probably are vying for 3 spots. And, the other guy will probably be in the back end of the bullpen at the beginning of the season. So I think, those are the guys right now. Sometimes, as guys emerge, much like Hunter and Dylan, did last year. So much is, said about the rotation. I don't mean it flippantly, but, you don't get a trophy, for being the Saturday starter on February 18th or Sunday starter. At the end of the day, it probably matters more who's starting against Vanderbilt in the first SEC weekend. So we feel comfortable, probably a little more comfortable than we did last year, which we should. Last year, I think it was kind of a mixed bag early on with the pitching, and we really, struggled to find that right mix of Delusion and Elliott and Diamond at the end. Hopefully we'll figure that out a little sooner this year.
Real quick, how good was DeLucia the last 6 weeks of the year? Okay.
That's saying he was good would be an understatement. Just dominant, and was able to roll together. I don't know how many good starts, and not just in postseason. People forgot that before we went on that run where we swept Missouri and LSU, before he lost to Texas A&M. He had won, I think, 5 Friday nights in the SEC prior to postseason, and then of course postseason. He lost that A&M, he lost that Vanderbilt game really close in SEC tournament, and then continued his pitching dominance through postseason. So he was pretty special.
He is Mike Bianco on the Out of Bounds show. You mentioned the bullpen. How do you and your coaches feel about mid-relief and the closer, depending on how it shakes out?
We're going to figure that out this weekend as far as who's on the back end. So it'll be one of those 4 guys that I mentioned earlier that doesn't start. We'll probably get the ball in critical situation late. The good news is I don't know if it's good news, but I think something to note is that if it's one of those 4 guys, they all have length to them. So, they're not guys that, are 1 inning only or 2 innings only. And Brandon, Johnson was like that, where you could bring him in the 7th with 2 outs, and he could get the last 7 outs of the game for you. And so all of the guys that I've mentioned, if they were in the bullpen, certainly can give you a little length and don't have to just, hope to get to the 9th inning. But I think other guys to look for, obviously Mason Nichols, who was another USA invite last summer, pitched really good for us as a freshman, especially down the stretch and in postseason and in Omaha. But some new guys that I think that people may not have heard of. JT Quinn, who's a big 6'6", 6'7" right-hander. He's got a super dynamic fastball and slider. He's going to throw the ball in the mid-90s and throw a slider up to 90 miles an hour, probably 86 to 89, maybe touching 90 with a slider. Just really explosive stuff for such a young arm. And another true freshman from California, Sam Takoyan, big physical 6'5", right-hander with a really good fastball, but really developed with Coach Lafferty this fall a good slider, where he was mostly fastball, curveball out of high school. Now he's got really a 4-pitch mix.
Mike Bianco on the Out of Bounds show. Let's move to Jacob Gonzalez, your superstar shortstop. Expectations are sky high, and people are talking top 5, top 10 draft pick. But what are your expectations for him this year, Coach?
Well, just to be himself. He's put together 2 tremendous years, and that's one of the reasons that I think there's so much anticipation to the draft and where he'll go. And most people rate him as and like you said, one of the top 5 picks. But a guy that's done it so well, in all phases of the game. But like a lot of those guys that are returning, the Aldermans and the Harrises and the Chatagniers and the Gonzaleses, a lot of McCants as well. I think one of the expectations is they'll take that leadership baton that was handed off to them by Elko and Bench and Graham and Diamond and Trophy, and be the leaders. One of the reasons that we were able to have so much success last year at the end is that they hung in there. Everybody knows our story and how our struggles, but the way we got through it was we had great leadership. And although Jacob's, I think, been somewhat a leader, his first 2 years, he hasn't had to lean on like Elko and some of those others. And so I think from a coach's standpoint, our hope, and we've talked to those guys about it, is that they'll take what they've learned last year from their teammates, their former teammates, and put that to good use this year.
Has somebody emerged as that type of leader? I
think I always cringe when people say, well, how's your leadership? or who's the leaders of the team. I mean, I don't think you really know that until you get into the season and you hit some adversity. And so, we've got guys that I think in place that can be those guys like the guys I've mentioned, Garrett Wood, who was elected captain, Hunter Elliott in just 1 year. I think Jack Doherty have that instant respect from their teammates. But what you do with it means more. So,
Sure.
I don't think it means as much when you say, hey, we got great, chemistry and great leadership and a lot of kumbaya in the fall, because at the end of the day, there's no adversity. Everybody plays in the fall.
Right.
Let's see when the bullets start flying in the spring and when you hit some adversity, and usually at the end, and I'm sure, Bo, as many people as you interview, when you talk about successful teams, they all talk about chemistry and how much they got along and it felt like a family and all these things that I think leadership provides, throughout the season. So I think we'll find out, in the next couple months, how good of leaders we have.
That's one of the best answers I've ever heard, and I've interviewed a lot of coaches. That's Mike Bianco on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Who's the hottest hitter the last 3 weeks on the squad?
Wow. Kemp has had a tremendous fall and spring, but, so has Calvin Harris. I would say probably Calvin Harris, going into the spring. But, when you say hot, I mean, you can get cold too. Hitting can do that. I'll tell you a name that just to bring up a guy that's, we only know over the last 3 weeks is Anthony Calarco, who's a grad transfer from Northwestern out of the Big Ten, and moving in at first base. Well, he was injured, when he came in, had surgery, had labrum surgery in his hip, missed the entire fall, but he's been terrific. He's probably the second leading hitter since we got back, and that's saying a lot because he hadn't really swung since May to live pitching. So it was nice to see him get off to a great start in early spring practice. So another name that probably you weren't going to mention, but probably worth mentioning.
Okay, and you had a veteran at catcher last year, but you have a superstar, people believe, can be a big-time talent behind the plate. How's that look the last month?
Well, Calvin Harris was a perfect game All-American coming out of high school, and injured his elbow in his senior year of high school and had surgery. So he kind of got a late start to his freshman year, but we had already had Dunhurst here as a sophomore. And so he had caught, sparingly over the last couple of years, some midweek games and some rest stops for Dunhurst, but has really come on offensively. He's a kid that you got to credit two things. One, for just being patient, right? Just, a kid that, waited his turn with the transfer portal and all the things that you hear these days. He's waited his turn. What a big boost he gave us in the World Series playing right field and with his bat. But now when you look, man, he's terrific behind the plate and, such a well-rounded catcher and, one of the top 50, players, ranked in the country for the draft this July. So excited to see him out there.
Where could Taiwan Malone fit in this year?
It's tough, and I say this, and I don't mean to give Ty a bunch of excuses. It's tough to do both, and it's tough to not be here all fall and come out and play this game. It's difficult. I'm sure you've seen, he had a great Saturday a couple weeks ago where I think he was 4 for 4 with three home runs. Just tremendous power. He just needs to see more live pitching. He's not going to find himself in the starting lineup the first weekend for sure. But our hope is that we can get him some more at bats, earlier. So hopefully we can see what he can do, and hopefully he can play a role on this team. And he moves around much better than you would think a 300-pound guy would at first base. And I don't mean that jokingly. I mean, like he's an average defender at first, and that's saying a lot when you're 6'3", 300 pounds. But obviously it's all about his bat, and a guy that always hit his whole life. But this is a different level, and he's doing it, with two different sports. So we'll see. But we like him. He's a great kid. He wants to play. He loves the baseball field. It's not just a hobby. He loves baseball, and so I'm hoping that he's going to get more opportunities this year than he did last year.
And Peyton Chatinier. So he's a guy. This is a compliment. You feel like he's been with you for 6 years.
Well, that happens. It happens when you play as a freshman every day. You get those guys, and we feel like it's sometimes reverse. I'm sure people felt that Tim Elko was here for 10. So one is the guys that start every day, and two, the guys that start every day and are good.
Right.
And Peyton checks both those boxes.
And you feel like there's even more runway there for him? Okay.
Yeah. I think, when you look at it, and I think if he was answering the question, he would talk about, some inconsistency for him offensively. Defensively, last year, a lot of people don't realize, like, he made an error like the first week of the season, or a few errors. But he didn't make an error after February, last year, the entire season.
Good
so,
grief.
He went 4 months without making an error. So, he's been so rock solid, with the glove. Offensively, it's kind of been, a mixed bag for him. He's had spots where, he's struggled at the plate, but then he's had spots like the last two postseasons where he's really come on, both in, last year's run to the championship, but even in 2021, where we made it, one game short of Omaha. He played great in postseason last year. So 2 years ago, I should say. And so I think, when you say, is there more in his tank? I think he would say that, he'd love to have, a really consistent year, instead of, some high moments and some low moments.
All right. We'll wrap it up with this. And you may have already hit on this. Is there a newcomer that has impressed you and your coaches that you believe 3 weeks into the season, Ole Miss fans are going to be talking about?
Yeah, I think it's been documented about Saunier and what, on the mound, what he's done. So I wouldn't pick him because I don't know if that would be necessarily a surprise. I think the two other guys that I didn't mention, Ethan Leger at third base, junior college transfer from Louisiana, and Ethan Groff, another kid, although from Florida, but went to Tulane last year. Both outstanding, both transfers that I think are going to impact our team immediately. Two guys that I think will bat in the top 4 or 5 in the lineup. And so, I think after a couple weeks, I think people will start talking about them. Maybe they didn't get some of the pub that some of the other guys have.
We'll leave it there. Mike Bianco's club starts on Friday against Delaware at home. And I think that's a 4:00 first pitch coming off a big national championship season, preseason top 5, top 10. And it will be Coach, it'll be a marathon, not a sprint, right? This 56-game gauntlet.
It always is, but you better play it like a sprint. You're in for a long haul, and there'll be some ups and downs. But the best thing is to win the first sprint, which is Friday at 4.
That's right. Coach, we appreciate it. We'll catch up with you a couple more times during the season.
Thanks, Bo. Appreciate it.
Mike Bianco, national championship coach on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. And so he's got Hunter Elliott, which makes him sleep better at night, as part of his rotation. And then he mentioned 3 other guys going for the other 2 slots, and whoever doesn't make it will come out of the pen. But I thought he made a great point. It's more about who they roll out against Vanderbilt than it maybe is this weekend. Speaking of, Ole Miss and Mississippi State could both play some pretty darn cold series to kick off the SEC. Ole Miss goes to Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State goes to Kentucky. And that's March 16th. So that could still be a really cold time of year. Just something to think about. They both start on the road. At Vandy for Ole Miss, at Kentucky for Mississippi State. Obviously, Kentucky even further north. But, hey, Blake, it could be 40 degrees at night. Maybe,
every bit of it.
Yeah,
every bit
windy,
of it.
You don't ever know. So our 2 teams will go north. To start off the year. Go ahead.
The 2 worst places to play are Lexington and Columbia, Missouri.
Ooh.
Now,
if you get Columbia in April or May, different deal. But earlier,
late April, because it's still. I'll see them play. They'll be wearing the Under Armour long sleeves, and fans will have jackets on, and they'll be 5 weeks into SEC play at Missouri. It's one of the things we always talk about why they can't. It's hard for Missouri to catch up to everyone else in baseball. They're playing in the snow basically for the first half of the season.
Ooh,
so you don't want to go there. Lexington will be the same way, and we've both been up there for football. I don't know if you've been up there for baseball. I have not, but football.
For baseball,
yeah,
no.
But for football, you get into that late fall, and it can get real cold up in Lexington.
Yeah.
I imagine early spring is in that same vein.
I have been there in April, but I didn't go to baseball.
Yeah.
And you are right. It can get chilled. Well, this will be March, mid-March.
Correct.
For Mississippi State.
So it'll be real cold,
yeah,
if I had to guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but as Chris Lemonis said yesterday, if you didn't hear that interview, it's on the podcast, it'll be perfect temperature Friday when you're standing next to a grill.
I thought that was funny.
That's such a great line.
I thought that was
such
funny.
A great line. Perfect weather if you're next to a grill.
Well,
you guys sell the program.
Are you going?
I think I'm going to go Friday's game.
Hold on, you have a disc golf tournament this
Saturday in Columbus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
With our good friend Andy Hunt.
Yeah.
Of discing that in Starkville. Stop breaking stuff over there.
This thing just totally fell.
Yeah. You're gonna have to switch mics for the next hour.
Oh man.
And I'll fix that one.
That was crazy. We appreciate Mike Bianco stopping by. But yes, Ole Miss goes on the road to Vanderbilt first series, and Mississippi State goes to Kentucky. That's on up there. Maybe we should make a bourbon trip.
Oh, you getting another barrel?
We are getting another barrel this year, but I don't know when that date is.
How about this start for Mike Bianco and the defending national champions in SEC play? Okay. They go at Vandy, home versus Florida, at A&M, home versus Arkansas. All 4 are top 10 teams.
Damn.
I know. I mean, that is a brutal start to the season. I mean, there's no easy schedule, I guess, unless you get to play Missouri.
I will
Georgia.
say, though, they get to pull Georgia and Missouri late.
Yeah.
So
they make up for it on the back half.
Mississippi State pulls Tennessee and Vandy.
It could be a lot tougher all the way through, but that's a tough start to the SEC schedule.
Yeah. And they go to Missouri May 4th, which by then will be
fine,
warmer.
Yeah.
I don't know how warm. I've never been to Columbia.
Missouri?
Yeah.
No, I haven't either.
I don't think I'm going to make it.
I probably won't either.
I don't think that's in the card.
Although you could stop by if you go to the draft this year because it's at Kansas City.
If we go again, if that company is kind enough to send us, I'm flying.
I guess I better start being nice to the Saints.
Yeah, you should. That's exactly right. That's basically the Saints. Yeah.
I won't. I'll die on that sword.
No, I'm not wearing my Saints pullover.
I'll die on that sword.
Wow.
The way Saints playoff dreams will die when they sign Baker Mayfield. Yes. Nailed it.
If they lose out on Derek Carr, Mike Detillier said Baker Mayfield. I'd rather have Gardner Minshew. The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is brought to you by Rick's Pro Truck and RPT. And RPT in Gluckstadt. All the cool things that they do to your truck, SUV or Jeep. Rick's Pro, or your fleet, right? RPT commercial. RicksProTruck.com. And, I'll give a shout out to Patrick Kelly, Finch and Kelly in Oxford. Friend of mine, running a great shop. And since we just had Mike Bianco on, who was fantastic. Thought he made a great point on leadership and so on. Back in a second.